What's up, everybody? We are back. Had a nice break this weekend watching the NFL draft. Finally, some live sports. It was awesome. So I guess technically live. It wasn't really sports, but something to do with sports. It was live. So it was a good weekend. Make sure you check out our draft grades that are up on LundaySports.com. I'll actually talk about them a little bit here and get into a few other things with football or baseball. Who knows? Let's mix it up a little bit. So let's get right into it, folks. The NFL held the draft virtually. Before we get into the draft grades, how do you think it went?
I think it went well. There's a lot of jokes that can be made about some of the presentations and talking about family issues and stuff like that. Saw a lot of that on Twitter, but I think it went great. I think, considering the situation and the circumstances they were under, ESPN did a fantastic job. I don't think it was easy for anybody involved, but they did a hell of a job and they got rave reviews. So, kudos to them because that was probably an impossible task to put together.
Yeah, I think Trey Wingo did a really good job as kind of the face of it. But I kind of like because I always really like Daniel Jeremiah, the NFL Network, and I kind of like the combination of Jeremiah,
Yes.
Mel Kiper, and Mort occasionally, and a smattering of those other guys. I thought there's plenty of guys to talk about different positions. It wasn't, obviously Todd McShay wasn't there because of the coronavirus, which kind of sucks because I always really enjoy him.
Yeah, he's the best.
But yeah, I thought they did a good job as well.
Well, I think real quick, I think the best part is nobody was like really able to talk over each other like they do on a live broadcast, which was nice. Everybody could make their point and then it could go to somebody else. So I think that was a big part of it that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I guess. Did you like? I think a lot of people seem to like the cameras in the people's houses. I'm not a huge fan. I know you need to do that to show something, but it seemed like it was off. Like I like the reactions, and it seemed like a lot of them weren't actually showing the reactions.
Yeah, they're just
later. It was weird. Maybe they just need to get the video edited real quick, and I don't know. There's delays and all that stuff. Got to make sure nobody starts saying stuff they shouldn't on live TV and all that stuff. So I get it, but I don't know. I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's guys sitting on their couch with their family, like cool.
Yeah, I think if that's one of the improvements that they can make is if they just do the reactions and keep it with that, I think that would probably be something that I would do. But they got to fill time. There's a lot of time to fill, and it's what
it lasted like 4.5 hours. I think it was 8 or 9 hours between the first 2 nights, and another 7 hours on Saturday. So
yeah, it was a long couple days.
So draft grades, I put up my draft grades. Like I said, they are on the website, Lunday Sports, Lunday Sports.com. Make sure you check them out. But why don't we go through, why don't we talk about first who you think got it right? You can kind of reference mine if you want. I'll pop them up on the screen here a little bit. But yeah, let's start there. Who got it right and go from there.
So you gave the Browns a B, which is a fine grade, but I actually think that they had one of the better drafts out of anybody, and they're typically an organization that doesn't really get draft day right most of the time. They addressed their most pressing need on the offensive line. They got Baker some help, and I think that was literally that was the biggest reason they struggled last year. And I think by shoring that up. Give Baker some more time. He's a talented guy. He didn't have it last year. I think that they, had one of the best drafts, if not the best draft.
Okay. I liked a couple of the guys they got late, specifically. Obviously, Wills was the absolute no-brainer of the draft almost, outside of Joe Burrow.
Right.
Delpit. Obviously, if he gets back to 2018 form, that's a steal in the second round. Two guys I really liked is Harrison Bryant. They got him pretty late, and they got Donovan Peoples-Jones pretty late. I feel like Peoples-Jones especially has all the tools. He's got the size, the speed. I know it kind of hurts you as a Michigan fan that he probably was underutilized there. Dealt with not great quarterback play, and some of it was his own doing. But I think his best football may still be ahead of him.
He's an NFL bodied receiver. He's got all the tools, like you said, and I think, if put in the proper setting, he can definitely succeed. He was certainly underutilized at Michigan. There's no doubt about that. You have the Cowboys as an A. Is that due in large part because CeeDee Lamb fell to them, or do you think there's more to it?
That was a part of it. I mean, I think at that point you can overthink it if you're the Cowboys. You already have two really good wide receivers between Cooper and Gallup.
Yeah.
You don't. It's not a need. Safety is like the blinking red light need on that team. Plus, actually the secondary in general, they lost Byron Jones. I mean, they needed some bodies back there. And there were certainly guys available at that point that they could have taken. But I think that sometimes the logical and smart thing and easy thing is what you do. And when a talent like that falls to you, you take them. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, in my opinion, he's the best wide receiver in the draft.
Okay.
By far the best after the catch. The guy is fantastic with the ball in his hands. He might not be as polished a route runner as Judy, or as fast as Ruggs, or as big as like a Jefferson or a T. Higgins. But I think he's a blend of all of the good things about all of them.
Sure.
And he's just a magician with the ball in his hands. So,
yeah.
But, you go through a little bit. I'm really high on Trevon Diggs. I like him a lot. I think, he was a 5-star wide receiver going into Alabama. Stephon Diggs' brother started at wide receiver. He's only been playing cornerback for a couple of years. 6'2", really twitchy. Absolute prototypical cornerback body. I think he's 6'1", 6'2", with receiver skills. He's raw, and he needs to be coached, but I think you could have an absolute lockdown corner in a couple of years, given proper coaching and some patience on their end.
He's probably going to play right away too. They got some holes in that secondary, so.
Yeah, they'll throw in the fire. I liked Robinson, the other cornerback they picked, and I was a big Neville Gallimore fan from Oklahoma. Tackle. I think he'll play a lot for them. The other one I really liked was the center from Wisconsin. I'm going to butcher his last name.
I was wondering if you were going to get that right.
I'm not even it's like Beatitz or something like that. But Wisconsin just pumps out linemen constantly. Yeah. And with Travis Frederick retiring, they needed a guy at center. This kid can play guard too if they need him to. So gives them some options, which is always a good thing. So I think they could come out of there literally with potentially 5 starters, 2 of which in Lamb and Diggs, who I think could be special.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good draft.
Yeah, they had a good draft, and I wonder if their draft gets even better because of what the Eagles did, and we'll talk about that later, whether or not that elevates their grade even more. The biggest controversy from Thursday night was, I wouldn't say controversy, but the biggest surprise was the Packers trading up and taking the quarterback of the future, the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. What are your thoughts on that? They certainly don't have a need. There's the window. We talked about that on the last episode where certain teams have windows and they're closing. The Packers are definitely one of those teams. What are your thoughts on the pick, and was that a huge reason why you gave them a C for their overall draft?
That was part of it. I think they do a disservice to both Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams by giving them nobody else to throw the ball to. I mean, last year it was what's left of the remains of Jimmy Graham and some practice squad guys and a guy who played cornerback somewhere. It was like it was not quite as bad as the Eagles, but it was close.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers still he's not prime Aaron Rodgers, but he's still a lot better than most quarterbacks in the league. He
Yes.
is.
I see it.
He still has, I believe, 2 to 3 more years of really highly level football ahead of him. And to take a guy who, here's the other thing, you're taking a guy in the first round, right? That at some point you're gonna have to make that decision to pick up his 5th-year option. That's part of the thing with the first round. But you probably have 2 to 3 years of Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And by the end of that 3rd year, you have to make the decision to pick up the 5th-year option.
Yes, which you damn well better if you traded up to get him.
I don't understand.
Makes no sense. No, they didn't get a lineman. They didn't get a receiver. Didn't get anything. They got a backup quarterback.
And I think they compounded it by the A.J. Dillon pick. I like A.J. Dillon on certain teams.
Right.
I don't think, if he would have went with, I'll just use the Bills as an example. Dillon goes to the Bills and you have Devin Singletary, who's kind of an outside, guy. That makes more sense to me as a guy that pounds the ball on the inside.
Yeah.
I also think A.J. Dillon, I think when they took him, there was other running backs out there that are better. They were still available. I just question a lot of things. They didn't come out with a wide receiver in the deepest wide receiver draft in 20 years. I don't get it.
Definitely, like you said, did a disservice to Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. The other team in Texas is the Houston Texans, and once again, in your words, Bill O'Brien proves that he shouldn't be in charge of player personnel. It's a fantastic line and really accurate, given how bad his offseason has been. But talk about their draft a little bit. You gave them a C-, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the lowest grade that you gave any team.
Nope. D for the Falcons was the lowest grade.
Oh, that's right. D for the Falcons.
They were second lowest.
Tough times in Atlanta.
The only thing that saved them literally from having the worst draft of anyone was their first pick. Ross Blacklock, I love him.
Yeah.
He'll be really good. I think you put him next to J.J. Watt, and you have 2 monsters that you got to try and block. He's athletic. He's not kind of just one of those plotters in the middle. The dude can move. He can get after the quarterback. He can play the run. He's not Derek Brown, but he's Derek Brown light, I guess, maybe. And, you had a huge hole there. DJ Reader left in free agency. They filled it. And for half a second, I was like, wow, Bill O'Brien did something smart. And then he proceeded to draft.
And then the rest of the draft.
And
yeah.
The rest of it doesn't make any sense to me. There's a bunch of guys that are borderline going to help at all this year. Some of them might even make the roster. You have just gaping holes at wide receiver because you traded one of the best ones in football for a box of donuts.
But they got, I
just don't get it. But yeah, not good.
Not good times for the Houston Texans. The Chiefs, you gave them a C+. I'm pretty surprised with that grade. We were talking with a friend of ours, the 3 of us were on draft night, and you're a big fan of what Edwards-Helaire brings. You think his skill set fits perfectly for the Chiefs offense, and I'm not going to disagree with you by any stretch, but interesting to see, given that pick, why you gave them a C+. How do you grade, or why did you grade the Super Bowl champs that way?
Edwards-Helaire I loved. I think he fits perfectly. I think the Chiefs have had an underwhelming linebacking core for a number of years now.
Agreed.
Edwards-Helaire is a fun toy, and he fits. Like I just said, he fits. But I think, they did come back with their second pick was Willie Gay Jr., who was a linebacker. I'm just not as high on him as some other people are, but that, he could end up being a stud. I'm just a guy, I liked him. Lucas Niang, big tackle, the project.
Right.
He got the body, got the athleticism, hasn't really shown the results consistently. So we'll see if they even coach him up. But I thought the end of their draft, their last 3 picks, I think were all defenders, and they just weren't guys that I think were – I don't even know if any of them make the team. So when you have holes, especially on defense, I like that they drafted defensive players, but I don't know. I thought I just thought there were better guys available when they picked that could help out right away.
But with that said, they did the one thing that the Packers didn't. They surrounded themselves with weapons on the offensive side of the football, which is certainly the strength of that team. The Dolphins, you gave an A to. They have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. Really strengthened numbers there. They started with Tua at pick number 5, a guy I thought that would slide. I'm glad he didn't. He's a class kid. Hopefully he succeeds in Miami. But talk a little bit about their draft. They, I agree with you. They had one of the best drafts, certainly one of the deepest drafts we've seen in a while. Talk a little bit about the Dolphins, and do you think they can compete for a top 3 spot in that division?
I mean, part of it was just pure numbers.
Sure.
But again, you can have a million picks, but if you don't pick people that are going to help,
right,
it doesn't matter. The nice thing about the Dolphins is their roster outside of cornerback was kind of wide open.
Yeah.
There's a couple guys that are probably cemented as starters, but for the most part, they could have gone a lot of ways, which helps. Tua is my favorite quarterback in the last handful of years. I know you're not quite as high with the injury stuff. I'm not going to say I'm not worried about the injury. That's stupid. But durability is really my only concern with Tua,
right.
put it that way. I don't think you can teach the accuracy that he throws the ball with, which is so crucial in the NFL. Drew Brees has made a career off being accurate.
Yes.
And you have all these guys that come in with cannons for arms that fizzle out in 2 years because they're not accurate. I mean, you can throw the ball a mile, but if you can't throw it to the right person, it doesn't matter.
Right.
His arm strength isn't huge, but it's not terrible. I think it's middle of the road. He can move around a little bit. He's a lefty, which is interesting. We'll see. I don't put as much stock in that as some people, but there hasn't been a lefty quarterback in the NFL in a number of years now, actually.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think the last lefty that started was Kellen Moore, believe it or not.
And he's an offensive coordinator.
He's an offensive coordinator, so that tells you all you need to know. But got the left tackle. There's a couple guys I like more, but I think they're about even. I really like Josh Jones out of Houston. He ended up falling in the 3rd round. Jackson's fine. I mean, he's athletic. He's got the body. He's got all the skills in the world. I just think he needs a little more beef, and he just needs to be more aggressive. There's a little bit of that. I don't like left tackles that don't want to knock you in the face. That would rather sit back and kind of whatever. But I feel like he's a little more of that. But he has a chance to be good, and there's a huge hole they filled. I liked Robert Hunt, the guard they got in. That guy's going to start right from the beginning. He's a monster, and he is exactly what you want. He will knock you down and then bury you in the dirt and then jump on you again. I mean, he's tenacious. From a small school, so we'll see, if he struggles a little bit with that transition. Igbenogany is a little bit of a luxury pick because they have 2 really high-end corners already.
Yes.
Byron Jones, who they sent as a free agent, and Xavier Howard, who they've got to be the 2 highest-paid players. They're pretty close.
They are, yes, they are.
But you take that kid's background, both his parents were track stars, Olympians, I believe, or at least Olympic trials. And he's another one that hasn't been playing corner that long. And you just let him figure it out. You put him in the slot.
Throw him in the slot, let him figure it out, yeah.
You let him chase people around.
Yep.
And, they ended up late getting a couple guys that I really liked as well. I just think they did a good job. They didn't outthink themselves. They did Curtis Weaver. They got in Jason Strobridge, 2 defensive ends that I think have some limitations but can help. Because they already signed Shaq Lawson in free agency, so they have a nucleus of guys that can rush the passer, guys that can play the run. I don't think they have a high-end pass rusher, but sometimes you don't need one if you have a bunch of guys that can get after it and can rotate in.
Yeah.
The one guy that could end up being a steal is Raekwon Davis, D tackle from Alabama. He's enormous. He's athletic, but there's a couple guys in the draft that you look at them, you look at their tools, and you're like, that dude should have dominated every game he played. And Raekwon Davis is one of them, and he didn't.
Right.
He actually, as a freshman, I believe he had like 8.5 or 9 sacks. He was a monster. And then it kind of slowly. Now, granted, he game plan for him. But a guy that big, that strong, that athletic should still be making plays, and he just wasn't. So there's obviously potential there, but they got to tap into that one, especially taking him in the second round.
For sure. Another team in the NFC that took a quarterback in a spot where a lot of people didn't think they were going to take a quarterback is the Eagles. They took Jalen Hurts in the second round, a pick that surprised many, including myself, considering they just signed Wentz to that deal. They had a lot of holes to fill. I know they addressed wide receiver in the first round by taking Jalen Reagor, and I think he's going to be fantastic. He has all the tools. He's a burner. He fits exactly what a Doug Peterson offense needs. Jalen Hurts is a winner, as you noted in your article, but a second-round pick on a team that can compete for a Super Bowl if they stay healthy is a little steep for me, considering that, obviously Carson Wentz does get hurt, but that's a huge drop-off, from Wentz to Hurts. What are your thoughts there? And when you answer, I want to say that Hurts is a good quarterback. He's not just a running quarterback. He can throw the ball, and he did throw the ball very well. I don't think it was the right pick in that spot for the Eagles.
I would agree with you. I have nothing against Jalen Hurts. I think he's probably going to come in and play in the NFL for 8 or 10 years and be just fine. I don't know if he'll ever be a real high-end quarterback, but he might not have to be. You put him in the right situation, and there's been plenty of quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls that you wouldn't be real high on your fantasy list.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that being said, to your point, I would have honestly loved to see them go wide receiver.
Safety, offensive line.
Right. I mean, and I know they did get another wide receiver late, I believe. But taking Reagor over Justin Jefferson, I'm telling you right now, I think Justin Jefferson is the safest wide receiver pick in this draft.
Yeah.
He doesn't drop the ball. He's not breakaway speed, but he's 4.4 guy. He can move. He is Keenan Allen. He is. And
right.
He's a guy that's going to catch it. He could catch 100 balls as a rookie. It would not shock me in the slightest. I thought Wentz could have just pounded the ball to him and take Reagor, who's a good wide receiver, but I think he's a complimentary guy in the first round, and then followed up with Hurts. I think it multiplied the Hurts. Right. If you get Jefferson and then you go with Hurts, it's like, all right, that's weird, maybe a little too high, maybe not at the right spot. I honestly think a guy like Jake Fromm would have potentially later in the draft might have been a better pick. I understand what Howie Roseman was saying. We need to be a quarterback factory. Wentz, without saying it, basically was saying Wentz gets fucking hurt all the time.
He does.
And it's just there's nothing. You have to kind of prepare for that. But Super Bowl winning teams don't prepare for their quarterbacks.
No.
Get injured in the second round of the draft. You know what I mean? They bring in a guy, a veteran behind them. They do something like that, you have guys sitting out there, Andy Dalton, as just an example, that you could give up nothing for.
Right.
And he could come in, back up Wentz. He gets hurt. You still have a very capable guy that can come in and get the ball to people he needs to get the ball to, still win games, keep the train on the tracks until Wentz goes back. I have a buddy who's a really good Eagles fan. Shout out Nick Rathbun. And I had seen the Hurts pick. So if you're following a couple guys on Twitter, they were actually announcing the picks before you'd see them on the television. So I saw the Hurts pick before it was put up on the television, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So I text him and I was like, what? With a bunch of question marks. And he's like, what? Like he hadn't seen it yet. So I just let it happen. And he comes back is like, this has got to be a trade, right? And I was like, I don't think so. I usually those are announced before the pick. Like
Typically, yeah.
so I don't know. It
I
was
agree.
weird.
It tells me that they're banking on a healthy Alshon Jeffrey, which is a colossal mistake. Um, and maybe they do put Rager on the outside a little bit. I don't know. They had a glaring need for an outside wide receiver, and they didn't fill it.
I
But
think he's 5'11". Like he's
right,
not
right.
tiny, but he's
Okay.
just I don't know.
He's not a
He doesn't
prototypical
strike
six
me
two. Yeah,
as a game changing all pro wide receiver, which is what you should be trying to pick in the first round.
absolutely. We'll talk about the Super Bowl runners up next, the San Francisco 49ers. You said if you were grading them on the first two picks alone, it would be an A+, and I agree there. They hit those out of the ballpark. Um, Talk a little bit about why you gave them a B, though, despite those first two picks.
I just the rest of the picks I just didn't think are going to be difference makers. The tackle they took out of West Virginia, granted his dad's cool story making raccoon hats and the weird stuff there. You can have some fun with, but it didn't blow me away. I mean, you a little bit. I wasn't factoring in trades here, so I didn't factor in
Of course.
Hopkins going to Arizona, Diggs going to Buffalo, Trent Williams going to San Francisco,
San
which
Francisco. Yeah.
is a huge deal. But when you factor into Trent Williams, who hasn't played in 2 years, is coming in for Joe Staley, who has been an All-Pro forever, who's retiring.
Right.
I mean, how much of an upgrade are you making? You're kind of just filling the hole. Now, granted, you're filling the hole with another really talented guy,
Yes.
but
There's a lot of risk involved with that move. I mean, he hasn't
yeah,
played a year. There's going to be an abbreviated OTA, or if any, there's going to be an abbreviated training. Who knows what's going to happen? So you're asking a lot out of a guy that hasn't played in a year and a half for sure.
mm-hmm.
And you gave up two picks for him.
Yep. So even not factoring that in, even if Williams comes in as a beast, like he
Right.
certainly could be, just wasn't blown away by the rest of the draft.
Yeah, for sure. And the last team we'll talk about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, given everything that happened with them. Obviously, signing Brady and Gronkowski. They got Wirfs to tackle. I mean, good luck, son. Your first role in the NFL is to protect the GOAT, Tom Brady. You love Antoine Winfield. Talk a little bit about him and why he fell as far as he did. I was pretty surprised.
I don't know why I fell. I can't really answer that question because the guy just made plays in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
He was always around the ball. He can play
Yeah.
safety. He can play nickel corner. He's one of those guys you can bounce around the field. So, I mean, I bet you he could, in a pinch, he could even play on the outside corner. I mean, he's that talented. And he comes from the good bloodlines. His dad was a, 10, 12-year player in the NFL. He was a solid cornerback for a really long time. And I love the pick for him. I think he's going to be fantastic. He's just one of those guys that you just always see around the ball. I'm sure that I could compare him to Ed Reed in that sense, but Ed Reed was just always in the right place at the right time.
Literally every time.
And Winfield reminds me a little bit of having that ability.
Absolutely. So overall, we'll circle back. The draft was a success. I think given the circumstances, ESPN did a hell of a job. And a lot of people clamoring for this type of format next year. What are your thoughts on that? I loved it. I don't need all the pomp and circumstance surrounding it, but I get why they do it. Maybe they can kind of fuse it together and do a hybrid of it. I don't know.
We will see. I actually am in the infancy plans of maybe having something with the website out at the draft next year. So for me, I'm hoping it's kind of a bigger deal.
That's a shameless plug, but all right.
Yeah, shameless plug. I think we'll see a hybrid of this. I think people realized you can do this a lot easier.
Yes.
With people can just kind of hang out at home. You don't have to have all these moving parts and pieces and people and families. And
And it felt
all
more
aspects.
organic. Like it was, and I wouldn't say pure, but it felt organic to me. Like it was right. Everything was right. Everybody was comfortable. There was no over the top bro hugs. It was nice. I liked it.
Yeah, it was good to the point where Roger Goodell started leaning back in his chair, and he had, I mean, acting. I don't know. I'm not going to say he had some of Grandpa's cough syrup, but
Listen,
he was acting like he may have had a few.
what's he
So
gonna do, man?
I, at that point,
Thirsty
I was like,
Thursday.
well, we've crossed over to kind of being a little weird here, but
Yes.
outside of that, in Roger Goodell's basement, which I hope I never see again, um, I think it can work. There's a format that you combine the two of them, and it makes it an even better event.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of moves have happened, quarterbacks. We talked a little bit last week about Cam Newton and where we thought he would go. A lot of rumors talking about the Patriots potentially, maybe the Chargers. Well, they addressed their need a quarterback by taking Justin Herbert at the 6th pick. Where do you think he goes? We were talking a little bit off air before we started recording, and you kind of threw out an interesting team in the AFC East that isn't the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, there's some obvious links with the Bills. I don't know. McDermott and Bean came from Carolina. I mean, there's a joke as a Bills fan that if they leave Carolina, they're going to Buffalo. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
there's a connection there, and there's a comfortability there, and the offense is with an athletic, scrambling quarterback, and it's based around those skills, which Cam Newton's made a career out of.
Yes.
That being said, there's some pitfalls, obviously, with a young quarterback like Josh Allen. Now he's entering his 3rd year. At this point, you step up. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to have competition every year. You've kind of been, I don't want to say babied along, but they haven't done a ton to bring in really high end competition. It's been his job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, with the way he throws his body around and his penchant for more than likely getting injured a handful of times, whether it's a series or a quarter or a game or two, or
He gets dinged up, man. Yeah.
He
sure.
takes hits and he gets hurt. And if you have a guy like Cam Newton sitting behind him, we just talked about it with Carson Wentz. You get a veteran guy behind one of these talented quarterbacks, you don't really skip much of a beat.
Yeah.
Bringing them in. And there's some question marks with Cam Newton too, with his shoulder, and
shoulders are tough to come back from, man. That's
you
a
don't
fact.
even know what he has in the tank currently.
Yeah.
He certainly looks the part. If you watch the social media, the guy's training like an animal, but you just don't know.
If not the Bills, I am having a tough time coming up with a suitable landing spot for him unless he wants to be a backup, and he's not going to want to be a backup by any stretch.
And he would be a backup on the Bills anyways. You
don't think they would?
No, I think they bring him in as a backup. I think that would completely derail the momentum they have.
I agree.
And I think they have to be real careful on how they did it. One other spot that I thought potentially as a backup would be Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Another guy in Ben who's 38. He's coming off a pretty major surgery. You don't know what he's got left, and he can't scramble.
No.
You have Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges there, who got plenty of time last year, and neither one of them were good.
Yeah, we saw that show. That we don't want to see that again. Yeah.
You bring in a guy like Cam for a year, let him learn the offense. You don't know what Ben's got left. I mean, he's getting close to the end here.
Right.
If you can almost jump early on Cam, give him a year contract, like maybe with an option or something like that, with incentives or something like that, where there is some sort of carrot dangled.
Yeah.
Or he feels he has a little bit of control with his destiny. Maybe Ben just doesn't have it this year. Who's going to argue with him? He's a Hall of Famer. He's going to be 39 next year. Maybe this becomes Cam Newton's team,
Yeah.
But like you said, outside of that, I don't know. You start going around, and there's a lot of really full quarterback rooms right now. It's
Tough, man.
wild. I know we've talked about this before, but it's wild in just 4 or 5 years how the NFL has gone from a league that had half the teams had a viable quarterback
Yeah.
and to a league that is just full of quarterback talent. It's unreal how quickly that's changed.
That's good for the game. Yeah, obviously, the better the quarterback play, typically the better the team is. Is there anything else you need to talk about from a football standpoint, or do you
The
want
only other
to?
thing I think is worth talking about is Jameis's decision to go to New Orleans.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
wanted to applaud him for that decision. It's not easy. You know you're going to sit. You just threw for over 5,000 yards,
Yeah. Yeah.
5,000 yards, and 30-some touchdowns. Granted, I know you also had the 30 interceptions, but you go and you sit behind a guy like Drew Brees and you pick his brain for a year, and you go and you work with Sean Payton, who's an offensive genius. I mean, let's
Yes.
be honest, he is. And Drew Brees is also 39, 40 years old. This is a very similar situation I was just talking about with Cam and Ben. Brees hemmed and hawed about coming back this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the chances that this are Brees' last year are probably fairly good.
Yeah.
Jameis gets to go sit, learn the offense for a year, kind of reset everything, and he could be the Saints starting quarterback next year. And they've gone from Drew Brees to another guy who's obviously talented. He just needs to kind of get the mental stuff figured out.
Who has another 8 to 10 years of a career left?
Exactly.
And they didn't have to trade up to get him. I'm looking at you, Green Bay Packers. So we'll switch gears. We'll talk about baseball. And it was an interesting article I sent to you today on ESPN. Jeff Passan, it was 20 questions. There will be MLB in 2020. It's just a matter of when, where, and how. And one of the most interesting snippets from that article was the concept of a giant playoff. And it's like a World Cup style kind of format where you have groups and they play a round robin and they advance to another round robin. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think initially they wanted a season, whether it's 100 games, 80 games, 50 games, whatever. They wanted a season. And to kind of really adjust the thought process to something like that intrigues me because, there was talk about Arizona, Texas, and Florida and all that stuff. And now we're switching to this. What are your thoughts? And I know you're not a purist. I'm not a purist, but we're kind of a similar thought process with baseball.
I'm
And
out.
how we like, yeah. So
I'm out. Not interested in the round robin.
I didn't think you would be, but
I
wasn't
to your
sure.
point, I think I'm open. I would say I'm open to considering change, but I am kind of a purist in most sports. I think there's things that the NFL has done over the last handful of years with rules that I've been slow to take to, but have been the right thing. Same thing with the NBA, and they're kind of embracing of the 3-point shot and kind of spreading out the floor on offense, stuff like that. Yeah, I'm more of a throw in the post, let the guys bang, and somebody dunk on somebody's head, or somebody get fouled hard, and I'm cool with that. It's just come, that's become more wide open. Football has become more wide open. You can't really do that with baseball, but similar thing in the sense that it's changing the game and the way it's played is just something I have a hard time kind of jumping on board early with. But this, this obviously wouldn't be a full-time thing. This is just trying to figure out how to make some money and stay relevant this year.
Such a tough spot, man. It's
it
such
is.
A tough spot.
It is. I mean, they're going to take the biggest hit of all this. I mean, the NFL is just sitting there going, we're going to be the ones that bring sports back to life. We're coming out the winners again, literally just because when our season starts.
Yes. Yes.
If you flip this around and this happened in the winter and we end in the spring, baseball's the savior. So it's just a matter of timing, but I know they got to try and do something. Well, at least I feel like they have to try to do something. I just don't know if this is it. I don't know. Where are you at?
I think I get why they're doing it, and I completely understand. And they would have, the LCS and the World Series and all that, and kind of restore order there. But if you're already going to be in warm climates, just utilize the warm climates to the best of your ability. And maybe the season, extends a little bit longer than you wanted it to, kind of reaches into the next off season, et cetera. But I just don't know if you're going to have that abbreviated of a season. I mean, I don't see it as something that people would get into. Yes, they would watch it on TV, but it feels something missing from it. And I think it literally leaves the door open for any team to win the World Series if you have that format. Because it's not rewarding the best team over the course of 6 months. It's literally like, all right, well, who's hot at that time? And given the uncertainty of a spring training or whatever they're going to have, it could literally be any team, probably except for the Orioles, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I would probably put the Marlins on that list too.
Or the Marlins, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you this: if you have a pitcher that has some elbow problems, now's the time to put him under the knife and Tommy John, because this season, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of a wash. Even if they do the format you're talking about, there's going to be a big old asterisk next to that World Series championship, next to the season in general, next to any statistics that are put up. I mean, the whole thing's weird. I don't know.
And something we can touch on in a different episode is the historical impact that this season will have. How do stats count? Do they count? And we'll talk about all-time greats like a Mike Trout, who's going to miss damn near a full season of home runs and RBIs and all. It's just stuff like that will have a historical impact, 10, 15 years down the road that nobody's really talking about. So that's something interesting that, maybe we can get into some other time there. So I don't know. If it's baseball, I'm going to watch. You're going to watch. A lot of people we know are going to watch. I just don't know if it's – I don't know, man. It's not the same. And it's a bummer. It's really unfortunate.
I mean, there was an article on SI today about the NBA, and they're potentially considering on May 1st letting some teams start to practice again in practice facilities, and maybe having some last gasp midsummer hope of having a playoffs. And even that is just like, man, just take the L. You know what I mean? Like, it's just these guys haven't been playing. Nope. And you still have states that are on lockdown that some of these teams aren't going to be able to play. You guys were the league that was playing, and your own players got this. Multiple players got this. I don't.
And ultimately, their decision to, postpone the season was literally the first domino that fell in a huge series of dominoes that really saw, sports just evaporated from this earth. That night, I remember it well. I'll never forget it. It just really set into motion. And then now they're talking about coming back, and it's tough, man. I do not envy a commissioner at this point.
No, because there's not a right decision. I mean, you have the people that just are, and I'm one of them. You're one of them, just longing for sports. It's such a big part of a lot of our lives, and just a way we not only fill our time, but stuff we're passionate about. Yeah. Stuff that makes us happy. Just mental aspect of sports for people. And I get it. Like, you want to fill that void, but do you do more damage at this point than, especially the NBA? It's like your season was almost the playoffs when this all happened. Now you've stopped playing for whatever, 5-6 weeks, whatever it's going to end up being. And that's just to start practice. You got to give these guys, and you can't just be like, all right, the playoffs start. Like, there has to be some games before that. Yep. And it's just like, how does all this work? I mean, you're going to be playing basketball in September, and no one's going to – that's when you do not want to come close to going up against the NFL if you're the NBA.
No, and then you're talking about pushing into the beginning of your next season and training camp. Right. And it's like you said, take the L. It sucks. It's a bummer, man. But, like, this is it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and you just take the L, learn from what, the protocols and everything that you have in place and build towards next year. That's really all you can do. And don't crown it. I don't think you need to crown a champion. You can't. You just, just pretend like
a strike shortened season or something like that. It's like, listen, something crazy happened. We didn't finish the season. It is what it is. Like, that happens once in a generation, or, a couple times in a generation, once every handful of decades.
Yeah.
something crazy happens. And it's obviously completely different situations, but back in World War II, I mean, you had Ted Williams and all sorts of other athletes going overseas to serve their country. Well, who knows who was taking their place? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just stuff happens. You can't avoid it. Let's just pray that it doesn't happen again for another 50, 60, 100 years.
Yes.
And we don't have to think about it again once we're finally past this. And also, let's be realistic. There's a whole lot more important things than sports, anyways.
Yeah, but it gives us something to talk about, which is nice.
Yeah, you're right.
But
So yeah, that's where I'm at, I think.
I agree, man. It's nice. We're finally agreeing on stuff. We usually don't do that. Pretty stoked.
No, there's a few picks we didn't agree on this weekend, but we kept that in the text chain.
Yeah, that was fun, man. It was a lot of fun, and it's like I said, Thursday night was great. It lasted about 4.5 hours, which is to be expected, but it was a good time. I love the format. I love being able to chat with you and some other guys, and it was a good time for sure.
Cool. Well, we will be back in your ears soon. We'll get this up right away here, and probably see what happens this week. Probably towards the end of the week, we'll get another one of these up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Unless something crazy happens that we can talk about, maybe one of these leagues makes a move, and then you best believe you'll hear our opinion.
We'll be here. Yeah, for sure.
All right, and just remind them one more time where can they follow you at?
You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Pazesky, LSJ. Talk about everything. Love to exchange text, or not text, but Twitter rants with you. We're not at the texting phase yet.
No. And little known fact, big soccer guy right here.
Huge soccer fan. Miss soccer. Let's go, Man U. I can't wait for soccer back in my life.
So whatever you want, soccer, NFL, NBA, college.
We're here.
Baseball.
You got it all covered, man.
He's your guy.
MMA. You did, yeah. I don't do it.
You talk soccer to me, and I will not respond. So
we'll get you. We'll get you on the train.
All right, you can find me at Hughes34. Again, remember, please go to the website, LundaySports.com. We're going to be getting some stuff up here in the near future. We did a lot of draft stuff recently, but we're going to be getting some different stuff up now that the draft is kind of come and gone. That was the big story in sports. Follow us on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We are on Twitter. We are on every place. So find us, follow us, interact with us. That's what we're hoping for. And unless you got anything else, until next time.
Good to go, man.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Later, man.